Hello friends, we are continuing now. We're working on the preparatory material for the correlative study of the Egoic Lotus, the in-depth study of the various petals of the lotus, and we have spent maybe 3 programs, maybe a little more, on the study of the 10 groups of human souls. And all the way from the most atavistic and primitive, the lowest forms of expression in humanity on our planet at present, up to the masters of the wisdom. Now we are going to look at a parallel grouping of individuals, only this is coming under the process of stages of adaptation. There are 8 of these stages of adaptation to be compared with the 10 groups of souls. And sometimes they interleave in very interesting ways. Now, what I thought I would do, so that you get the sense of continuity and can think about this on your own without my interpolations, I'm going to read these 8 stages. That will take, I don't know, maybe a half hour. 20 minutes, half hour, something like that. And then we will go into the careful study of each one of the stages and try to correlate the stages with the 10 groups of souls. So then, let us begin the stages of adaptation. And he discusses first the process. I will interpolate a few things, but not much compared to what will be said later when we actually take them one by one. In the human family, owing to the presence within the human physical form of a thinking entity called by us the soul, I would call it the Mercury-Venus soul, the procedure followed in order to produce conscious control is that of adaptation. And we all know that the soul needs to control its outer form and all events, as we learn in the mantra. All forms in the 3 lower subhuman kingdoms are also subjected to the process of adaptation. This, and you know, what can we, well, you know, I just feel tempted to start talking about it. Maybe I should just read it. Intelligent change for a purpose. All forms in the 3 lower kingdoms are also subjected to the process of adaptation. But that is a group adaptation to environment, where in humanity we have the adaptation of the individual to his environment. The many have become the one with humanity. The person who works consciously and intelligently at adapting himself to that situation and those conditions in which he finds himself is relatively rare. Conscious adapting of oneself to circumstances is the result of evolutionary development, and here are the stages. So it takes a while before we come to ourselves and find ourselves in the position where we have sufficient intelligence, purpose, power, control, motivation, where we actually begin to literally take ourselves intelligently in hand. So the first, the stages by which man arrives at this capacity may be enumerated as follows. That unconscious adaptation to his environment of the man who is primarily an unintelligent animal. Low-grade savages are in this class, and many purely agricultural peasants who have not been subjected to modern education. The man at this stage is little better than an animal and is governed entirely by instinct. Yet, of course, the learning goes on. There's certainly no conscious adaptation in class 1. I'm pretty well going to read these, and we get the overview in that way. Number 2, an unconscious adaptation to environment carried on by the man who is beginning to evidence some faint flickers of mental perception. Okay, this is partly instinctual and is based on a growing self-love. There is more of the I consciousness in him and rather less of group instinctual awareness. In other words, what we all do, what the tribe does, what the group does, and there is no individual to deviate from that. You find this growing self-realization in the low-grade slum dwellers. There he's using that word slum again. It seems to be a kind of karmic destination depending upon the quality of life that the individual has built. You find this growing self-realization in the low-grade slum dwellers, for instance, and in the petty criminal who is instinctual enough and bright enough to live by his wits and to show quickness in reactions and deftness manually, as if to crack a safe, let us say. It is the stage of animal cunning, and I think we will see that there has been some, this is a very Mercurian type of listing, and when we compare it to the 10 groups of human souls, we will see that it is as if some stages have been skipped. So Mercury gives, in its earliest and most primitive type of expression, manual dexterity and animal cunning. Okay, then the third stage, and we'll see, there won't be exactly a one-to-one fit between this, the list of the 10 groups of human souls and these 8 stages of adaptation, but there will be important parallels, and sometimes when you compare the two lists, important supplementation occurs, and things that would be missing in one or the other alone are provided. A conscious and purely selfish adapting of oneself to the environment. In these cases, a man is definitely aware of his motives. They are consciously thought out and recognized, and the man makes the best of his circumstances. He forces himself to live as far as possible harmoniously in his surroundings. In this, there is really good motive, but principally the man is governed by the desire for comfort, physical, emotional, and mental, to such a degree that he will discipline himself into such a condition that he fits wherever he may be and can get on with anyone. Well, this is interesting, and it certainly still seems as if the individual is toiling in the hall of ignorance, which, remember, is not necessarily ignorance of emotional response or ignorance of knowledge, but ignorance of the higher pairs of opposites, which is the soul. Number 4, from this stage on, the differentiations become so numerous that they are difficult to follow, being mixtures of pure selfishness, developed often to the nth degree, of a growing recognition of the group, of an awakening realization of the right of other people to a similar degree of comfort and harmony, and of a steady effort to adapt conditions of character and personality life so that the purely selfish interests do no real damage to others until we arrive at. Well, there are some of the qualities here that are found in the second set of petals. Actually, when you're reading something about the cultivated altruism of the sixth petal, there are things there reminiscent of what is just said. And yet, when we move on, we see that we might not be that far. Let us see. 5. The average really good man. It reminds one of this, where the bulk of humanity can be found. Let's see, are these the sheep of the human family, or is it something more? The average really good man who is struggling to adapt himself to his surroundings, to his group relations and responsibilities in such a way that some measure of love can be seen. I refer not here to that instinctual love for family and children and herd which men share in common with the animals, and which I think is demonstrated even in the first 2 petals and increasingly in petal number 2, and which often breaks down when the loved individuals assert themselves. Well, you just watch what's happening today in certain religions when people attempt to leave them. It's horrifying response. The tie is not strong enough to hold, and the motive is too selfish to resist the pull. I refer to that motivated love which recognizes the rights of others and consciously strives to adapt itself to those recognized rights, whilst tenaciously holding on to the rights of the personality. And this really does deal with the second tier of petals. By the time we enter the third tier, we are already against nature, so it would seem relinquishing gradually the rights of the personality. Then stage number 6. Then we have the work of adaptation as carried on by the aspirants of the world, who are theoretically convinced of their group relation, of its paramount importance, and of the need of every personality to develop its powers to the fullest capacity in order to bring real value to the group and to serve adequately the group need. You can see some of the Leo energy entering there when we speak about every personality developing its powers to the fullest capacity. In true esotericism, there is no such motive as killing the personality, that, the great Virgo mistake in the labors of Hercules, or of disciplining it to such an extent that it becomes a dead, poor thing. So he's speaking in the language of Virgo here and its possible abuses. The true motive is to train the threefold lower nature, again Virgo, the integrated personality, selfishly integrated at first, to the highest demonstration of its powers, latent or developing, in order that these powers may be brought to the helping of the group need, and the personality of the aspirant may be integrated into the group. So even some of Petal 7 we will see is involved here, the use of all knowledge for others. Thereby the group life is enriched, the group potency is increased, and the group consciousness is enhanced. One must bring something to the group. We remember that story of the master who left his 3 servants, each with a different number of talents. 1 talent for one, 2 for another, and 5 for the third and last. And the one with 5 created 10 out of it. The one with 2 created 4. And the one with only 1 talent, out of fear, hid that talent, lest it should be taken from him or somehow disappear. And that's exactly what happened when he did hide it. So we certainly have to give what we have to the group and not spend all our time beating up on the personality as if by unusual duress we will somehow enter into the kingdom of heaven. That is an early stage, and actually the Buddha, in part of his training, well, at least the Prince Siddhartha or the Prince Gautama, went through a stage like that of extreme asceticism. It's a higher turn of the spiral, of course, but he realized at a certain point that it wasn't really the way to enlightenment. What is therefore to be seen going on in the life of the true aspirant today, his developing recognition of group responsibility, can also be seen going on in groups and organizations and nations. Hence, the many experiments. A process is going forward whereby these groups, large or small, are being subjected to a house cleaning, to a discarding of the rubbish of old and worn-out ideas, and to the period of disciplining and training which must precede all real group life. So, looking at this from the perspective of astrology and how Dane Rudar used to look at it, he said group life really begins in the second hemisphere of the zodiac with Libra, and all of this disciplining and training must occur in Virgo to prepare the individual to enter real group life in Libra. When this process is over, we shall have these groups approaching each other in a new and real spirit of cooperation, of religious fusion, and in an international attitude which will be new indeed. The attitude of competition, whether blatant or latent, is not the most productive. So we haven't really entered this entirely. But sometimes, when there is I was just noticing there are some rescue missions which are operating today with some tragedies that have occurred. The sinking of this South Korean ferry, the disappearance of a flight from Malaysia with almost 300 people aboard. In each case, the different nations are coming together to lend their different skills in the search and rescue operations. It's a small thing when compared to what Master DK is discussing here, but it shows that people can, when something really important is at stake, the rescue of all these lives, or at least determining their fate, countries can rise above their national competition and antagonisms. Okay, then they will have something of a surer and greater value to offer to the whole. So individuals will do this and groups will do this as well. And within all these groups which are struggling towards this newer realization and integration, and which express what might be called the sixth stage of adaptation, are those who are already at the seventh stage. So we are noticing here the aspirants, and maybe we'll be talking in a moment about the disciples. Here we have, well, complete unselfish adaptation to the group need and purpose. Well, maybe not so many disciples as we know them, but on their way, of course. Those who have reached this point in their evolution are decentralized as regards their own personality life. They are no longer identified within the personality as the personality. The focus of their mental attention is in the soul and in the world of souls. So this is quite a large step, actually, and we wonder whether we're speaking about those with initiate consciousness. Their attention is not directed towards the personality at all, except insofar as is needed to force it to adhere to group or soul purposes. These servers, who are expressions of soul radiance, well, there's the radiant lotuses, and the attractive power, so especially there's the eighth petal involved with the attractive power, are knowers of the plan, maybe not just second-hand, so they may be initiates indeed, and in every organization they constitute the new and slowly growing group of world servers. Well, okay, so DK determines the level here, and that level is pretty much that of the second degree. The true member of the new group of world servers has taken the second initiation, and is to be on the outlook for those who are showing signs of taking the first or second. And in every organization they constitute the new and slowly growing group of world servers. In their hands lies the salvation of the world. Now, that's an amazing statement. It is apparently not in the hands of the masters of wisdom per se, not in the hands of humanity on the average, but in the hands of a certain part of the human family which has grown enough to be in understanding and intelligent touch and loving touch with the spiritual hierarchy, and yet can relate as human beings to human problems and can apply what they have learned as members of the hierarchy or associates of the hierarchy to those human problems. Finally, we come to the eighth stage. Let's see. Well, that I'll take a little later. The final group in this scale of adaptation is that of the higher initiates, because he could have been speaking simply of initiates in stage number 7, the perfected elder brethren and great companions. They are perfectly adapted to their personalities. In other words, the personalities really serve them entirely, to each other, and to world conditions, but as a group. They can respond intelligently and according to the plan to all of these different spheres of activity. They are learning how to adapt the forces of nature, the energies of the rays and the potencies of those zodiacal signs, to the world need and the world demand in a particular manner and at any particular time. So they're extremely intelligent. They have lots of the third ray built in because it is the ray of adaptation, and they are called adepts. It is here that the work of the disciples of the world and of the higher types of aspirants proves helpful as a field of experiment. They are not members of this group, but they can be experimented with. And it is the new group of world servers in that group that the process of adaptation goes on. So these are the 8 stages, and if you remember pretty accurately about the 10, then, probably your mind has already begun to connect them. Now, I have here the human groups, but I feel that this document is too expansive. Let's see if we have anything here. The 5 groups of souls. Yeah, this one's better because there's less elaboration concerning it. And let's see here. The 5 groups of human souls. I just want to... yeah, here they are. Well, okay. So the consciousness is sleeping in group number 1. There is well, how to describe group number 2: digging, caring, under direction, eating, sleeping, procreating, a very unawakened and Lemurian type of consciousness. Group number 3, superficial desire, the child souls, very physicalized emotions. Group number 4, the modern Atlanteans. So the mind nature is not functioning strongly, so there's not so much Mercury going on here, except in the sense that from the time one is individualized and begins to work within the lower 3 worlds as a conscious being, a gradually conscious being, Mercury is growing in power, but this is still the very emotional stage. Group number 5 is the bulk of humanity, and these are the sheep of the human family. How shall we remember this? They have intelligence, yes, but they are largely emotional, and they think when need requires. Group number 6, the creative thinkers. The thinkers and creative thinkers, as he says here, working in the various fields of human knowledge, aspiration, politicians, religious leaders, scientists, skilled workers, artisans, and those whose thought process is helping humanity. Group number 7, we have those upon the probationary path. And these are struggling people, and they are the world mystics, intensely conscious of duality. Group number 8, the disciples of the world. Group number 9, the initiates of the 3rd degree, who know there is no such thing as my soul and your soul, but only the soul. And finally, group number 10, which is the listing of the masters. Well, not individually, but a listing referring to the masters. So they are the perfected adepts. So we'll keep these 10 in mind as we begin the process of looking at the 8 stages of adaptation in a fuller sense. Okay, let's just see here. Okay. So now I am ready to look at this larger document. We began with the process in the human family, owing to the presence within the human physical form of a thinking entity. It's been said of man, what is man? An animal plus a living God. The physical form, of course, is the animal particularly, and the thinking entity is the living God, that unit of being consciousness. It's called by us the soul. Here, he does capitalize it. There's no consistency in the word, in capitalizing the word soul, so one has to be very careful of the context. The procedure followed in order to produce conscious control is that of adaptation. Will is involved and intelligence together. Will and intelligence produce adaptation. Of course, there has to be as well the desire factor. So the will factor, working through the mind and intelligence, plus the desire to achieve a certain end, even if it's just the comfort of the moment, produces adaptation. There's soul control achieved through adaptation. So the third ray is required. Adaptation is related to Mercury. Mercury is interesting. We say it's a fourth ray planet. It is in the sense of its soul, but I've speculated at least that its personality and probably its ultimate monadic nature is that of the third ray, with its, in my view, secondary monadic nature being on the fifth ray. So mind and the third aspect of divinity, mind, intelligence, the third aspect of divinity, will, desire, these produce adaptation, the production of conscious control eventually. At first it may simply be getting by in the environment with the to the advantage of the form that is being directed by a kind of instinctual intelligence. But later it is definitely a controlled, divinely inspired process to produce the alignment of the activities in the outer world with the archetypes of the inner world. You adapt the outer conditions to the inner archetypes, and when they finally really resonate and are congruent, then you've achieved your purpose. All forms in the three lower subhuman kingdoms are also subjected to the process of adaptation, but that is a group adaptation to environment, and of course it is unconscious. Maybe it's not unconscious from the point of view of the entity that informs the life of a particular kingdom, which includes the forms, but from the point of view of the particular units of life, they are endowed with instinct, a kind of unconscious tendency towards a life-preserving activity, or at least a form-preserving activity. We can call it that. We have to be careful how we use the word life. Sometimes the word life is used to mean the being, which is at the heart of all things, and other times it represents the vitality, and other times it simply represents the livingness of the form, the animation or movement of the form, whether it's breathing or not. There is a group adaptation to environment. It happens through the group soul, but behind the group soul there are entities which embody these various groups of forms. Whereas in humanity we do have the adaptation of the individual to his environment. I mean, once a man begins to come to himself, and a man is an individualized mind, how long does it take before he recognizes that is another matter. DK talks even about 3 million years from the time individualization occurred. But man eventually recognizes a self in the field of all the other things. It's kind of a reflexive consciousness, a backward-turning consciousness. The seer sees itself, as it were. So he's an individualized mind. That came about, of course, through individualization. The person who works consciously and intelligently at adapting himself to that situation and those conditions in which he finds himself is relatively rare. I mean, often we sort of bumble along, and we have so many different human beings who are not particularly involved in attempting to improve their nature. They simply want to fulfill their desires. So they do not think within themselves how the patterns through which they live, the activity patterns, can be improved according to some higher pattern which they are beginning to sense. But we, aspirants and disciples, this is something we had better do. How do we make things better in our environment, not only to fulfill our desired nature, but in line with those patterns, archetypes, which we sense as the divine plan. These immanent pattern and archetypes, immanent, not imminent. I mean, hopefully they're imminent, coming sooner, coming almost immediately, but at least they are within, immanent. Okay, so we have these Saturnian conditions, things as they are, and these things can be changed for the better, consciously so. Things as they are, let me put it like this, can become, let's see, I'll put this here. Things as they are can become, I don't want that, I want this. Yeah. Can become what? BCM, things as they are intended to be. And that's really what purpose is. It's a pattern that is intended to be. Purpose is, let's see, purpose is a pattern which is intended to be by the supervising logos, whatever stature that logos may have. Man himself is the supervising logos, but every logos has his superior. And even when we get to the universal logos, we cannot say that the absoluteness, which is the cause of all things, is infinitely superior to any possible logos. This is interesting. I'm remembering here that Leo is positive to circumstances, especially when related to Uranus, and tries to control them instead of just going along as circumstances indicate. And that is why, from one perspective, Leo has its Saturn has its detriment in Leo, and Uranus is the ruler. See. Circumstances as they are, which is Saturn, do not do so well in the face of the Leo deeply individual positive intention ruled by Uranus. We know that the hierarchical ruler of Leo is Uranus, making all things new according to the will, and hopefully not just the individual will, but a higher will which has been affecting the individual. Yeah, you know what I'm doing here. I'm reading these, basically the Tibetan statements, and then elaborating on them by ideas which have been collected over time, and putting in some new ideas occasionally, weaving it all together as much as may be possible, and giving, through this elaboration, food for thought, so that the mind can grow and become useful and intuitive and an instrument for discovering, revealing reality. Conscious adapting of oneself to circumstances is the result of evolutionary development. It wasn't always so. Early man had sort of an unconscious instinctual change in the face of circumstances, unconscious instinctual change in the face of circumstances, and let's just say form enhancing or form preserving change. The whole idea of the survival of the fittest is an adaptation. Those forms who could reacted in a way to circumstances which allowed them to survive, and other forms did not have sufficient power, strength, instinctual response to adapt in that way, and then they failed. And therefore the idea is that the ones who succeeded in surviving passed on their tendencies, their hereditary material, to their offspring, and these offspring then were somehow endowed with that capacity. But of course we have to remember about the group soul. The passing on of success really in those animal days goes to the group soul. And then when forms are born, albeit out of the most fit, the ones that did survive, they inherit that which the group soul knows. It's not that they inherit that which is coming directly from the form per se, because the inner qualities of intelligent instinctual response are stored in the group soul. So the stages by which man arrives at this capacity may be enumerated as follows. The capacity to adjust and change his environment according to his intentions. Let's put that down. The capacity, cosmic astral plane, don't want that. Capacity to adjust and change his environment according to his intentions. And if those intentions reflect higher intentions, then so much the better. Not my will, but thine be done. So we may enumerate this as follows. Now, actually, basically, I think it's been well said that we are developing here the Brahmic factor particularly. There's Brahma, there's Vishnu, there's Shiva, the ancient Hindu Trimurti. And that Trimurti is an expression of the third, second, and first aspect, and we're dealing here with the intelligence, or the third aspect primarily. That will be behind it, and desire representing the second aspect will be behind it, of course. But the actual mechanism is one of intelligent action, active intelligence, right? And that's Brahma, isn't it? Intelligent action is the main focus, and thus Brahma. All right, so now we deal with unconscious adaptation. I think we've all experienced it. Well, I did something, things got better, but I don't know what I did, and so, things have improved, but I haven't really gained from what it was. It was just an instinctual response, and I survived, and things improved for me, and that goes on for a long time. So that unconscious adaptation, and is it also unintelligent? It's unconsciously intelligent, or unintelligent consciously, CNSL, consciously, but unintelligent consciously, but it is in a way, but unconsciously intelligent. Because built into every adapting form is that inner God, which is guided by the being who is informing the kingdom in which that particular form is found, or that particular unit is found. And that great being, who is the Lord of a kingdom, has great intelligence. So imbues its representatives, as unconscious as they may be in themselves, with intelligent adaptivity, instinctual intelligent adaptivity. So the unconscious adaptation to his environment of the man, who is primarily an unintelligent animal. And yet, some good things do happen from this, and man rises still, even with this apparently unconscious, unintelligent reaction, adaptation. Man rises still. Low-grade savages, I guess, DK is implying that sauvage, it used to mean the wise ones, because there was a time in history when the industrialization of society was producing many abuses, and people were suffering and living diminished lives, and there was the sense that if we only got back to nature and returned to the noble sauvage, the noble wise one, the savage, we would touch a type of knowing about living that we had lost long ago, perhaps. But anyway, I think he is meaning here people who are in the very natural state. They have not had a lot of soul experience. In general, the so-called savage is a person of nature or close to the environment or close to the elemental life. So low-grade savages are in this type, and many purely agricultural peasants. Well, I wonder, would he include the Bushmen of Africa and the Aboriginals of Australia and the Vedhas of Ceylon and the Hairy Ainus of Japan? This was that unindividual. Well, it was not individualized by the solar angels. It was. It did not have the living spark. These people did not have the living spark of soul mind in their mind. They had a mental unit which had been sufficiently stimulated to begin to cause self-awareness. So is this who he means? Because we do recall that very first group, the second group, more likely. The first group, I don't think so. The first group of souls was unique for being extremely disadvantaged in terms of any kind of awareness of self or awareness of the environment. If I go here to, I think this is a little bit too big. Let's see, stages of adaptation, and yeah. Oh, so what I'm saying here is that he probably is not entirely meaning the souls that sleep. They are like a throwback and never appear on what is called the natural savages, maybe even the low-grade savages, or the peasantry. And here he is actually talking about those who are in agriculture, peasants, and so forth. So what do we learn from this is that this does not fit so much with category number 1 of the souls, not fitting with group 1 of human souls. So the question is, what would happen if these people, particularly, were subjected to modern education? There are some people who just can't benefit from it at all, although he did say something of the kind in relation to the, second group of souls, that they have no sense of time or purpose. They can seldom be trained along any mental line, and they rarely exhibit skill, but maybe, the amount of educational opportunity today and the ways in which it can be delivered are quite amazing. So there's a chance for an acceleration of this kind of group. As I say, there's not a complete overlap between the stages of adaptation, the 8 of them, and the 10 groups of souls. So anyway, the man at this stage is little better than an animal and is governed entirely by instinct. This fits pretty well with group number 2. Well, does it go as far as Middle Lemurian period? Yeah, well, when we talk about the Middle Lemurian, we have to be careful because man was individualized in Middle Lemurian times. So if we go back to early Lemurian times, then we really are speaking of a stage in which there was no self-consciousness in animal man. But sometimes we like to start, from Middle Lemuria. There were early examples of the Middle Lemurian. Then came the middle examples of the Middle Lemurian and the later examples of the Lemurian. So I haven't always kept those entirely clear, but what I mean by Middle Lemurian is what happens when individualization takes place, but it's really the early man. And it's actually later in the period than the actual early Lemurian period. So experience teaches adaptation. The mind does not teach experience teaches. Okay. So that's interesting because we don't really have a mind to work with as a conscious instrument within the human being, and so one learns by trial and error. Okay, let's see here. Learning by trial and error. Maybe not much emotion here, and he does say something similar. They emotionally, however, they are asleep, and mentally they are totally unawakened. So I begin to think that there's quite a close connection between human group number 2 and the stage of adaptation number 1, leaving human group number 1 as sort of a preamble to the whole story and representing very few human beings indeed. If human group number 2 has only a few thousand, well, then what does human group number 1 have? So so this fits pretty well the dig and carry under direction category of number 2. We recall this, right? That they can, is that correct? Let's see, the souls that are simply aware, they eat, sleep, procreate, these two are relatively rare. And where are our digging and carrying? Okay, I should here have somewhere this. Okay, let's see if I can find it. Strange. Dig and carry. Yes, yes, under direction. There it is, right before sleep, eat, and procreate. Okay. All right, now we move to the next stage of adaptation. And what we have noticed here is that he seems to have skipped the emotional level. So we're talking about the thinker, really. We're talking about Mercury in the man, the mind in the man, and we're not speaking so much of emotional response because we do recall here that the group number 3 of the souls had a shallow wish life or desire nature, and desire was all becoming rampant. Okay, DK is focusing more on a number of different factors when he's dealing with the human souls. He seems mostly to be focusing on intelligence when he's dealing with the stages of adaptation. So a shallow wish life or desire nature for those who are the human soul groups, but oriented towards physical life. Here, as he goes into the stage of adaptation number 2, he has skipped over that phase and entered what I call the realm of lower Mercury. So DK calls it an unconscious adaptation to environment carried on by the man who is beginning to evidence some faint flickers of mental perception. Perhaps this could be said somewhat of group number 2 here. They can seldom be trained along any mental line, but you know, maybe along some of them can. Okay, and here in group number 3, there's not much about the mental nature. Mental equipment is there, but seldom trained to use it. Well, here in stage of adaptation number 2, we're talking about those faint flickers of mental perception, and maybe there is some parallelism there. So an unconscious adaptation, still instinctive. It's an intelligence which is non-purposeful. It does not have a design behind it. It pretty much functions under how the desire nature directs it. So it's applied intelligence, but it's not consciously applied with a goal, with an intelligent goal in mind. So the unconscious adaptation to environment is carried on by the man who is beginning to evidence some faint flickers of mental perception, and what seems pretty clear is that man, even from the very beginning, is born with a mind. So it's quite possible that this type of human being can display mentality before there's really a lot of work in the third petal, or at least, well, let's say very early in the third petal process. Remember, those early petal processes, they do last a long time. I mean, really, if we look at the Hall of Ignorance and its unfolding, you know, we're almost to the point of, well, I mean, you know, take it all together and you've got just about 21 million years and even more for the unfolding of the third circle or tier of petals, because so many people that started this journey 21 million years ago in Lemuria have not yet unfolded the third tier of petals. So fortunately, the other unfoldments go rapidly. So mental perception can occur before the third petal, even in the second petal and perhaps the first. There will be, you know, the awakening mentality, but certainly the mind is going to serve the instincts, and the mind is going to serve the desires, and they will not be of a high nature. It is possible, you do remember from the child souls, group number 3 of the souls, that some mental training is possible. So for the third human group has desire for satisfaction and thus much self-love. That's the third human group, not the third stage of adaptation, see. So here we are, a third human group, much desire for satisfaction, shallow wish life, motivated by the desire for satisfaction of some kind. And satisfaction is of the desire body and of the physical body. There are the satisfactions of the mind, but this is not what we're talking about. It's the fulfillment of certain tendencies originating basically in the instinctive physical body or in the desired nature. So this is partly instinctual, says the Tibetan. So there's some emergence of consciousness and is based on a growing self-love. So that that puts it in a parallel here with the third group of souls. All right. Is based on a growing self-love. Where is self-love really beginning to emerge? Well, in the second petal perhaps, but we can ask, is it also engendered in that very long experience later on in the first petal? There is more of the I consciousness in him. And certainly in the first group of souls, there's not much at all, and even in the second group of souls, maybe not a whole lot of I consciousness. They are bewildered by their environment, no sense of time and purpose. I would say that the sense of I-ness, even in the second soul group, is relatively dim. And here there's more of the I consciousness coming in. There's very little of that in stage 1 of adaptation. And of course, someone who I've taught this class in Australia, and there's a lot of respect for what the Aboriginals have done and can do, and their resourcefulness is here pointed to. They've been around actually a long time and are quite a unique group, and they're going to be going out of incarnation even according to their own lore, because they have been in their own idea the custodians of the earth, and now they will not be needed. So there is this more of the I and less of the group instinctual awareness. Now there's a lot of, in the Aboriginals, there's a lot of the group instinctual awareness, how the tribe works together, and so this is an important idea concerning the first petal. You find this growing self-realization. All right, so that's what we're dealing with, and we're assuming that the first stage of adaptation, this is now the second, did not have much growing self-realization. In the low-grade slum dwellers, for instance, remember he did use the word slum in terms of the atavistic first soul group. But a slum is a very disadvantaged type of environment, but perhaps gives sufficient opportunity for people of this grade of unfoldment. It's a huge limitation upon those of greater mentality who may be born there, and they use it as a springboard to leave. You may find that this growing self-realization in the low-grade slum dwellers, for instance, and in the petty criminal, who is instinctual enough and bright enough. See, there is mentality here. It's Mercury. This is Mercury to live by his wits and to show quickness in reactions and deftness manual. This is absolutely Mercury when you read it, and suggests survival and living off the land through incipient intelligence based on observation. You know, you might say observe your environment and profit from it. So this is still very selfish. They're out for themselves, and DK gives us a very good word by which we can characterize this stage. You know, in black is what he is. His writing is in black here, and we're calling it the stage of animal cunning. So it's intelligent, it's bright, but it certainly does serve particularly the instinctual vehicle and the desire nature, those things which are particularly developed in the animal. So it's primitively selfish intelligent. It's good lower Gemini and Mercury, lower Mercury. Is there any third petal activity? Well, if so, only in the very beginning, and there's no really integrity, even though the eye is beginning to be sensed. So it is a survival stage. It's not a social stage. The fox is sometimes attributed to have this kind of cunning to look out for itself. It's foxy, selfish, intelligent, and the social content is low with the emerging eye, always looking out for its own advantage. So what do we have so far? In the first and second stages of adaptation, we have this, the man who is primarily an animal. Okay, so I wonder if I could maybe, I'm trying to find a color in which I can draw, or maybe here, maybe this will do. Okay, maybe, all right. I think I'll use this one. It's not great, but it will do. So it's man, primarily an animal, okay? And actually, as he says, unintelligent animal. He's not lifting that up too high. Primarily, I don't think we will find so many people this way, unintelligent animal, and fewer are those who are simply the agricultural peasants. But you know, there are places, he tells us, particularly in India, in China, I think, in South America, where we will find this kind of group. So man is primarily the unintelligent animal, and there, after number 2, man has animal cunning. I think we look for ways to remember these things. Man with animal cunning. All right, but notice that he really is not, he is talking about the intelligent response. He's not so much talking about the sentient idea here. We are not talking about the growth of sentiency. We are not talking of the growth of sentiency, feeling response. No. All right. Now number 3. Oh my goodness, I had a few, maybe we're not quite to number 3. So yes, this man is smart enough to survive by his wits, could be in the jungle, slums are like jungle, could be in the desert, could be wherever. It's early Mercury. its mentality used for the sake of the satisfaction of selfish desire and animal instinct, and reasonable intelligence, growing but very selfish. So when we speak of Mercury, we are speaking of adaptation. This is the adaptive planet. Petty, the word petty criminal, he says, suggests instinctive understanding of where one's best interests lie, exploiting the environment, playing on a small scale, preying on others, using intelligence to take advantage. This is Mercury certainly without any higher Venus. Petty, the word petty suggests a very small scale of operations, not like any, you couldn't do organized crime with this kind of intelligence and worldview. Let's see if there's anything else here of note. So instinctive selfish intelligence, manual dexterity and animal cunning. That is what the stage means to us now. Now we move into another stage, and here we find that he is he's really working in terms of Mercury. He has left out. We do not have in the following the purely emotional Atlantean stage of the human soul. We're not talking about emotional man, and I wonder if we're talking about the average really good man. Are we, however, talking about group 5 of souls with the average good sheep-like man? Maybe. Let's see. So this is still selfish, and wherever you have the idea of selfishness, you are in the hall of ignorance. It is only the higher of the pairs of opposites which makes it possible for a man to begin sensing there is another way, there is a higher power, there's a different way of acting. I mean, instinctively, some of the group's self-preservative tendencies are the seed of selflessness, because they hang together in order to survive, so they have to consider each other. But when DK is here talking about purely selfish, and Mercury is a planet which is rather has quite an amoral adaptation, it doesn't have that kind of cohesiveness that we might look for. We are in the hall of ignorance. So a conscious, purely selfish adapting of oneself to the environment. You do need mind, and in this case, the third petal must enter. This will have, let's just say, note below, note that this group will have the social sense more highly developed, even if for selfish purposes. It is not altruistic. I know, I'm spending quite a bit of time on these human groups, but think of it, you really do want to be able to identify the stages through which human beings are passing, especially if you're any kind of educator or any kind of political leader or economist. It is just useful to identify. Now, birds of a feather tend to flock together. It may be that among your friends and among those with whom you spend the most time, it may be a fairly homogeneous group, although obviously with many different types of individuals in it. So you may not rub shoulders with all these different kinds of groups, but there are ways of noticing them through the media, through the study of world events, and through the things that may be happening in your own country, where different groups are fighting for different causes and for the permission to express themselves in various ways. So it is important, to have these solidly in our minds so we can know how to deal constructively with the people whom we encounter. So this is, again, purely selfish. The planetary tendencies are, as it were, in the air. It depends on what type of form is receiving them, because they will be refracted according to the type of form through which the planetary ray passes. The unselfish person will have a use of the tendency in an unselfish way. The selfish person will take the tendencies of the planet and skew them in a selfish way. So a conscious but conscious, and here we have to really note that every word is important, not unconscious, because pretty well things were just happening in the first two groups. In other words, people were doing things but not knowing why they were doing things, and they did not even why or how. In the unconscious groups, people did things, but knew very little why or how they did them. They just did them, and if they succeeded, they did. They may have had some technique to do them, but they didn't have a sense of why it is they are performing in this way. So a conscious and purely selfish adapting of oneself to the environment, yes, mind is needed, and in these cases, the man is definitely aware of his motives. So a consciously motivated person, they know why they are adapting as they are. They know why they are responding or adapting as they are. Why they are changing things, why they are changing conditions. Why they are changing conditions as they change them. So it's not just I want what I want, but it's I want what I want, and I know what I want, and I think over how I'm going to get what I want. The factor of desire is still pretty prominent, and it's not like one has the mental motivation to know. Knowing is serving the desire nature and the instinctual nature. So in this case, let's put that down, that knowing is still serving the instinctual nature. It is not for the it is not knowing for its own sake, which is the life of the mind, so to speak. Okay. So in the first stages, I want what I want. I'll get it any way I can, and then in the second group of adaptation, and I'm getting better at it because I am willing to exploit, and I have some instinctual wits to do these things. I mean, even if you think about it, when you look at an animal, they sometimes do extremely intelligent things, and certainly a human being who is fulfilling animal instincts can do very bright or intelligent things. But here there is some planning, or some, in this group, in stage 3, let's make that positive, 3, there is forethought. And an understanding of a larger context in which the individual operates. The objectives of the petty thief might be very narrow. I just want that. But when it comes to someone in stage 3, they're looking at the social milieu in which they find themselves and what kind of response they want from that milieu. So in these cases, the man is definitely aware of his motives. They are consciously thought out. The others may, in the earlier phases, they just act rapidly and instinctually and sometimes intelligently. In the earlier stage of stage 2. There is rapid, more instinctive, and sometimes intelligent action, but not a lot of pre-pondering. Okay, so they are constantly thought out and recognized. The man makes the best of his circumstance. He studies his circumstances mentally, and he seeks to gain advantage, right? He studies his circumstances mentally and seeks to gain advantage, making the best of your circumstances. So this is petal 3, maybe the selfish part of it. It lasts a long time, petal 3, and remember, it is intelligence there. Later, of course, it's interesting that sacrifice is associated with petal 3 because one is often forced to do certain things which do make for growth later. Such as, the businessman who sacrifices his life, the worker who sacrifices his life to feed the family, so to speak, or the soldier who goes to war to save the country. It's all a bit bigger than he understands, but he's in it, and the sacrifice is made, and he uses his intelligence accordingly. So it's more than animal cunning. The man is more polite, more social, but still selfish. I like the word opportunism, looking for one's best advantage in the circumstance. So, looking for one's best advantage in every circumstance, and in this way, getting ahead. So it's opportunism. As things arise, you just use them. The word is use, and using people, using circumstances. Now this is, it's hard to see this person as the average, really good, nice person who's the sheep in group 5 of the souls. So I say there's not this one-to-one correspondence, but following group 5, and before we become solidly in the creative thinker category of group 6, there is this area where it may be possible to use one's intelligence simply for selfish purposes. Okay, so harmony for personal purposes, not real love necessarily. There's the ray 3, lower ray 3 factor going on here, manipulativeness, still using others. And this is very important, and I think in this group I would say that other people become a means to an end. So DK says he forces himself, and right there an example of the will, right? And, okay. An example, of the will, guided by intelligence, to live as far as possible harmoniously with his surroundings. So he's kind of an average semi-selfish man. Let's just say it's not altruism. That's the important thing to realize. This type of adaptation is not altruism. To live as far as possible harmoniously in his surroundings. He does have the social sense. He can discipline himself. He has mixed motives, you might say. He may be all very, very selfish, or with mixed motives, but not with pure motives. So all of this is operating, I think, mostly in the second petal and some of the third petal. In this, there is really good motive at times, right? But principally, the man is governed by the desire for comfort, physical, emotional, and mental, to such a degree that he will discipline himself, you need the mind to do it, into such a condition that he fits wherever he may be and can get on with anyone. And this is more of a second petal activity, and it is somewhat connected with group 5. The different things he says connect with different groups of human souls. So we'll say here, somewhat connected with group 5 of souls, whereas the nice, good people and so forth. Let's take a look here. We've come a long way. See, this is group 5. The Atlanteans. He has too much intelligence to be the modern Atlantean. These are the bulk of the. They can be classed as intelligent human beings. Okay, so right there's a connection between stage of adaptation number 3 and soul group number 5. Predominantly emotional. Well, the mind is certainly serving the emotions, and they're the bulk of humanity at this time. A good, well-intended. He emphasizes the feeling nature here. He doesn't emphasize the selfish adaptation. Nice, good people who are largely controlled by mass consciousness, relatively unthinking. It's as if this, and they are sheep. Let's just say that that this group seems to be stage of adaptation number 3, seems to focus. Let's see. All right, I know this looks like a mess. Please, I'm sorry. Okay, so stage of adaptation number 3, SOA, sphere of activity, S. Okay, I'm going to make one of those. I'm going to, if I can find it, there it is. This is it. Okay, STOA. And I'm going to call this stage of adaptation. It's going to be easier in the long run. So STOA, stage of adaptation 3, seems to fit into a category between soul group 5 and soul group 6. The only thing that's left out of it is well, are they really nice and so forth? DK says there can be really good motive, but obviously there are mixed motives here. And what the man aspires to is not really the creative mental life at all. It's some advantage in the personal sense. So he will discipline himself for this into such a condition that he fits in wherever he may be and can get on with anyone, all for the sake of social advantage. Discipline for the sake of getting, not disciple for the sake of getting. For the sake of getting, there's not still any kind of internal integrity. It's more as you desire me. The third and fourth petal, some of the fourth petal may be coming in. There's not much individuality, but a growing sense of I-ness surely must be there. And in petal 4, we are already moving towards individuality. In petal 4, moving towards individuality. See, individuality. And 5 for sure has that individuality. So comfort, materialism, getting along, fitting in, safety is a strong motive. I think these can be fairly successful people. Maybe not in the sense of being so individually successful as soul group number 5, where they become the soul group number 6 rather, where they become really the creative thinkers and so forth. But successful because he can manipulate his environment and be supported by it. So we can call this conscious, selfish adaptation with some good motive, and good motive begins in petal 2, Y, where Venus is stronger. But we'll get into all that. I know there's many pieces here. You're going to have to put them all together. Here we find enlightened or semi-enlightened self-interest. Oh, why do I do that? Well, it's good for me to do good things for people because it's better for me, see. So conscious adaptation is often selfish. and I've asked the question here, do comfort and integrity sometimes oppose each other? I think very definitely. Where does integrity really begin? Well, with petal 4 and petal 5 and working in the hall of learning, where we really begin to understand the higher of the pairs of opposites and the need to apply that higher of the pairs of opposites in social situations. So if we discipline ourselves to get along, we're still talking about mass consciousness, and getting what you want is still mass consciousness and not yet individual consciousness. Okay. Not, oops, there we go. Not yet individual consciousness. So this compromise, making the best of your circumstances, getting the most out of your circumstances, opportunistic, using things and people, the word use, make it work for me. The concrete intelligence is involved here, and one sacrifices in order to achieve some degree of social standing and so forth. Some of the petal 4 may be at work here. So it's manipulation to get what you want. It's more advanced than animal cunning because more social and more sociable, and let's just also say more conscious and more intelligent. Stage of adaptation number 3. Okay, now we move into, this is stage of adaptation number 4. Selfishness and its transformation. From great selfishness until doing no harm to others, still for somewhat selfish motives. So fitting in is different than having some of that empathy, you see. Group 3 begins, stage of adaptation, rather, 3 begins with purely selfish adapting. And by the time we reach stage 4, we're not talking so much about pure selfishness. He does say at some time in stage 3 that there can be good motive. So if there is good motive, there is really good motive in this to live harmoniously with the surroundings. In this, there's really good motive, but it's principally governed by the desire for comfort, physical, emotional, and mental, to such a degree that he will discipline himself into such a condition. So he has definitely come first in stage of adaptation number 3. Now, what's going on in stage of adaptation number 4? From this stage on, well, this is problematic, of course. The differentiations become so numerous that they are difficult to follow. Being mixtures of pure selfishness developed to the nth degree, of a growing recognition of the group, and of an awakening realization of the rights of other people to a similar degree of comfort and harmony, and a steady effort to adapt conditions of character and personality life so that the purely selfish interests do no real damage. He's buffering his purely selfish interests. I just read what DK said there and not my own comments. So buffering and neutralizing the purely selfish interests. So definitely we have to be moving into petal number 4, where the family becomes very important, and where those sacrifices are made for those that are close to one, and where we're beginning to integrate our capacities and elevate our nature towards the real creativity of petal number 5. So so DK has just moved through a number of differentiations. So we're moving from selfishness to caring for the other person, even if not for the purest motives, but at least caring. And it's interesting, I think, that the most selfish types can be found in the early 5th petal process. They are really insulated from others in their egotism. It is not primitive. It's very calculated. Selfishness based upon a belief in one's own superiority. Okay, and that's a Leo factor as well. So so we're moving through mixtures of pure selfishness developed to the nth degree, and that pure selfishness, I think, in the fifth or Leo petal, of a growing recognition of the group, and you're going to find this in petal number 4, which is related to Cancer, and in which we really are in the hall of learning, that we are part of a real social fabric, and the people in it have the right. So the love petals are coming in here. Of course, there is love petal influence coming from petal number 2, but petal number 5 will help us grow and in these recognitions of the group. Even petal number 4, because we know when you think about the group, the sign Cancer also enters the picture of an awakening realization of the right of other people to a similar degree of comfort and harmony. These are Cancerian words, and the empathy factor begins to increase with this group. So, empathy factor increasing. You can expect that from the empathic sign Cancer, which I am correlating, among other signs, with the 4th petal. It's really pretty much impossible to talk about these groups without sort of referencing the petals. Now, it'll all make a lot more sense when it's all under our eye at the same time, but as you see, I'm creating strands of connections with other systems that have to be correlated with these groups of human beings. So now we're moving together through different stages, all of them subsumed under stage of adaptation number 4. So we start out with selfishness to the nth degree, and then the group is coming in under the influence of love. Venus will be found working here, and not just intelligent adaptivity, awakening to the rights of other people through empathy. When one really cares about parenting and doing the right thing for one's children and one's group and raising them, so to speak. You talk about raising a child. This is a very Cancerian thing, giving them advantages. So you begin to realize through those who are close to you that others, those who are close to you, have every right to the same type of a degree of comfort and harmony and advantage that you have wanted. And then you begin to extend that on from your family. So the family becomes larger, as it were. All of that's coming under the Cancerian influence, and of a steady effort to adapt conditions of character and personality life. So there are things you don't do, things you do, so that purely selfish interests do no real damage to others. Now, that is such a Cancerian thing, because Cancer is this. Let us look here. I will call it. Look at the protectiveness. Look at the protectiveness, and yet selfishness of the sign Cancer, associated with the 4th petal. FRP? No, that's not going to do. FRPTL. Oh, well, sorry. So this business of tempering your selfishness, it can be working in the 4th petal. When we become an aspirant in the 5th petal, it definitely is at work. When we try to correct ourselves and be somewhat altruistic in the 6th petal, it is at work. Doing no real damage to others. It's kind of interesting. What does it say about Ray 4? It talks about a hatred of causing pain. So when we talk about the 4th petal, and we talk about, and he says also amounting to moral cowardice, but the hatred of causing pain is inbuilt. It's not just a question of realizing that altruistically that you want the other person to advance. It's also that you don't want to cause them harm, even as you are pursuing your own advantage. So this is not quite the same as being unselfish. It says here, there will be selfishness, but I try to keep it in check, and we are still selfish. We're trying to fulfill our desires without harming others. So I find here the theme of intelligent self-interest at work. And you know what that is. I did talk about it. Intelligent self-interest. We do, do good things for others because they bring good things to you. So why did you do this apparently altruistic thing? Well, it was in the long run so that good things would come back to me. That which I desire will come back to me. It's like people who, well, they do good things because they think they'll have good karma by doing good things. But where is the true motive of love for doing the good things? So this is a mixture. This petal number 4, of course, ray 4 is called the ray of the mix, interestingly enough, ray of the mixer. This stage of adaptation represents a mixture of motive and action, and spanning selfishness to reasonable selflessness. When I put the word reasonable in there, it's not selflessness at all costs. It's within reason. Selflessness within reason and for a purpose, which is usually to gain something. So let me put it down here. Selflessness within reason. And there it shows that the intelligence aspect is still, which is interested in the preservation of the form, is still in ascendancy over the love aspect. So let's just say that intelligence aspect is still stronger than the love aspect in this petal 4, and I think we could say that of Cancer, Did I say petal 4? I meant stage of adaptation number 4. We could say that of Cancer, though, relating to petal 4, because it's got such a strong intelligence component, ray 3, ray 7, and so forth, but it has a mixture also of ray 4 and ray 6. So it's emotionally one wants to do something for people that makes one feel better, and also it brings a gain to one. Let's see what else we have here. The higher mind enters as conscience to make a person respectful of others' rights and the groups. And if the higher mind enters as conscience, the reason I use the word higher mind, I think it's connected with petal 4. Let's see, if I were to go to, okay, suppose I were to go to this page, roughly, see how quickly I can get there, a treatise on cosmic fire, and page, let's say, 537, and then we go down a little, and we talk about the second group, petals, and the petal of knowledge for the astral plane unfoldment is brought about by the conscious balancing of the pairs of opposites and the gradual utilization of the law of attraction and repulsion. The man passes out of the hall of ignorance, where from the egoic point of view he works blindly and begins to appreciate the effects of his physical plane life. By a realization of his essential duality, he begins to comprehend the causes. Okay, that's good, but it's not exactly the one I was looking for. So the one I'm looking for is maybe around page 822, and let's see what it says here. Higher knowledge, here it is, applied through love on the physical and astral planes. That's petal number 1 in the middle row middle tier. So I'm saying that the higher mind enters, or something of the higher of the pairs of opposites enters, to make a person feel at least guilty, of hurting others, respectful of others' rights and the group. And I say some factor of guilt as a method of restraint is operating. It's hard to talk about stage of adaptation number 4 because it carries so many stages, but what one has to basically look at is the progress all the way from the selfish adaptation, he says selfish to the nth degree, all the way to really respecting others' rights and their rights to have what you have. Now, it can be intelligent self-interest here, or it can be as a result of your conscience speaking. Okay. I'm going to have a little problem here, and we'll see whether I see what has happened. Yeah. All right. So, this is this stage of adaptation number 4 is spanning things that happen in petal 4 and 5. As I say, selfishness to the nth degree, it's really found in petal 5 in the early part. A little of 6. Some of the ideas here, you can have your selfishness also. I will not interfere. It's just called intelligent self-interest. Isn't that what it's called? That's the one I was looking for. I will not interfere. A little respect or consideration for you is coming out, and this is enlightened, intelligent self-interest, guided progressively by conscience, so that true respect for the rights of others eventuates. Okay. Enlightened self-interest, intelligent self-interest. Okay. From petal 3, where you think, petal 3 is where you think, through petal 5, where you try to do no harm to others while still remaining selfish. This is also true of petal 4. And even the altruism of petal 6 is not entirely selfless. Even the altruism of petal 6 is not entirely selfless, as he will say and describe. Now, what I'm doing, clearly, I'm mixing. Good fourth rate thing to do, right? I'm mixing stages of adaptation with soul groups, with petals, and trying to look at their connection. I mean, enough of you know sufficient of the of occultism and DK's teaching, so that what I'm trying to draw together here in the relations I'm trying to draw together will not be totally bewildering, because you will have studied this. For those of you who have not really studied the Egoic Lotus yet, I will just say that better times are coming. Clearer times are coming. So in stage of adaptation number 4, we don't get the truly good person, not the truly good person motivated, entirely by altruism, because that's what a really good person is. He's thinking of the other. It's sometimes said of Christ, what is he? He is the man for others, it is said. And Pythagoras has said, what is a friend? A friend is another self. And there's so much wisdom buried in that statement. So, so far we have this stage of adaptation number 1, which is unconscious, unintelligent adaptation. Number 2 is animal cunning. Number 3 is, how do we put it, kind of it's a conscious, intelligent, selfish adaptation. So let's call it this. Conscious, intelligent, selfish adaptation. Doing the best you can, getting by. But you're still out for yourself. Still out for yourself. Petal 4, you begin to realize perhaps you have to be out for others as well if you really want to be out for yourself. If I can, maybe I'll put that down. You have to be out for others if you want to be successfully out for yourself. Now, DK sometimes talks about people who give a lot to charities and are seen serving in various ways, and that such servers may have very mixed motive and may be gaining more from the service they do than a benefit comes to those they serve. So this is kind of a this is a stage of adaptation number 4. Oh, look, I have so much money, the government's going to take that away from me. But if I give it to charity, not only will the government not take it away from me, but I will gain social reputation and advantage. So we're still not entirely the good person, though we do have effects which are good in society, right? So now this goes on. It's, since DK is speaking in general, it's not possible for it's not possible for us to pinpoint and make cut and dried and perfectly sequential every one of these stages. There's so many overlaps, and everybody is a unique combination of energies from unique circumstances. So we're just trying to get the general categories here. I say that this goes with the 5th group of souls, this stage number 5. To an extent it does. Let's see, selfishness and its transformation. But even we can see that stage of adaptation number 4 may have gone beyond the 5th group of souls. So maybe it's not entirely correct that stage number 5 of adaptation goes only with the 5th group of souls, who are the nice, good people and the sheep of the human family. You see, there's some going backward and forward here. So maybe not only. So some of this is with the 5th group, and a little more advanced than the 5th, because conscious goodwill is entering, which is like the human group number 6, HG human group number 6, or soul group number 6. And what does DK say about this? The average really good man who is struggling to adapt himself to his surroundings. So the minute there's struggle, the kind of struggle that is suggested here, the higher of the pairs of opposites may be operative, because that's what causes the struggle. The selflessness part of us is working against the selfishness part of us. So the average really good man who is struggling to adapt himself to his surroundings, to his group relations and responsibilities in such a way that some measure of love can be seen. And so, petal number 5 and petal number 6 are really involved here, and it's going to tell us something about petal number 6, where the person tries to be altruistic but is not really succeeding. It's sort of a probationary petal, the petal of probation, as it were. Okay, so we're going to look at this in the 5th and 6th group of souls, and also in the 5th and 6th group, 5th and 6th petals, and even some of the 4th petal. The average really good man. So he's a nice, good person. And what did DK say about petal number, excuse me, I'm getting my terms mixed up. Average citizen, good, well-intentioned, good and well-intentioned. So the word good is definitely mentioned here in the human group or soul group number 6. There's a lot of astralism, of course, but he does say they're more easily regimented. Let's see how easily regimented stage of adaptation number 5 is. So there seems to be, it seems a little higher, a little more advanced than the 5th. And that I've kind of said, because the 5th doesn't seem to have quite so much, the 5th soul group doesn't seem to have quite so much altruism in it. And they are more easily led, but they are the nice, good people, nevertheless, you see. This seems a little bit more than just the nice, good people. So struggling to adapt himself to his surroundings, to his group relations and responsibilities. I mean, this is a, it looks like a socially positive person. Considerate, and not only for reasons of self-gain. So it seems. Stage of adaptation number 5. So there's work in the love petals, definitely. It is right to be living. So when you know it's just simply right, regardless of what it means to me, to be loving, regardless of the gain I get. It is simply right. And your religion tells you so, and so does your upbringing. And so this is a type of positivity which is emerging in the love petals, definitely. And it seems a little, maybe a little before petal, a human group number 6 or soul group number 6. But related to it, because you get some pretty brilliant people in soul group number 6, the creative artists and all of that kind of thing. And but here there is this emerging social sense, and that is schooled in the circle of petals number 2, 4, 5, and 6. So the emerging social sense, and it's not manipulative for self-gain. Socially positive person. Okay, so trying to live according to conscience, and what is trying to live according to conscience? So why is that? Okay, let's take a look at this. Trying to live according to conscience, but what is conscience? It is the higher of the pairs of opposites with which he comes in contact in tier 2. So the second group of petals is where he comes in contact with the higher of the pairs of opposites. In the hall of ignorance, he did not come into that kind of contact. So the conscience is seizing hold here. And notice the DK says the average really good man. And that's, let's just say, not the, oh, come on. So not the apparently good man. Not the apparently good man. I'm going to make that, of course, in the right color. What we have here is color confusion. Okay, well, one day somebody can sort this all out. Probably won't be I, but, someone maybe will. So I refer here, some measure of love should be shown, as is schooled in the love petals. I refer not here to that instinctual love for family and children, so there's a lot of that in second petal, and maybe even, well, there's instinctual something in the first petal, but instinctual love is coming in the second petal, for sure. And the herd, I refer not for the instinctual love of family and the herd, which men share in common with the animals, and which comes in the first circle of petals, in the hall of ignorance. and which often breaks down when the loved individuals assert themselves. Well, you know, it's in the second circle of petals that you assert yourself, and in human group number 6. In the second circle of petals, one asserts, and that's Leo, you know, definitely Leo. It all goes towards Leo and that middle petal, as it were. So, but we see so many people that still have that tribal loving consciousness, but when a person tries to be an individual, they kill them, you know, or they throw them out, or they do something terrible. So, so the instincts are pre-Leo in this sense, and this instinctual love breaks down when the Leo phase is really asserted, because who are you? You're not one of us. I raised you to be thus and so, and look who you are now. You're forgetting everything I taught you. You're trying to be yourself. So the tie is not strong enough to hold, and the motive is too selfish to resist the pull when it comes to this instinctual type of love. So it's not the true love of the person in himself or herself to express what he or she wants to express. It's love of the person in a certain context, what that person is supposed to be, a dutiful daughter, a dutiful son, you know. In other words, role expectation in an instinctual love, role expectation exceeds the expectation that the child or relative will express himself or herself. So I don't really care about you in and of yourself. I care about you to the extent you will fulfill a role. Well, we're going beyond that now in this 5th stage of adaptation. So DK is now, interestingly, not just talking about mind, he's getting more of the second aspect into it. I refer to that motivated love which recognizes the rights of others and consciously strives to adapt itself to those recognized rights, whilst still tenaciously holding on to the rights of the personality. We have not yet transcended the personality. So we are in what I say here, the later part of soul group or human group. I call them the same, you know, the 10 groups, number 5, and some soul group or human group number 6. We have not yet reached the first initiation, the first degree, nor is the 6th petal even, where we're actually trying to express some love, but we can't quite be selfless. That's not even the first degree either, and when it's completely unfolded, it's the 2nd degree. But you're working in it well before the first degree. So anyway, in this stage of adaptation, number 5, I'm actually caring about you and your rights, and it's just not a selfish convenience for me, but, you know, I still want my personality rights. And you can understand how later, when you become the true disciple and then the initiate and then the high initiate, you're giving up your personality rights per se. The personality is simply an instrument of the soul. And the soul is looking out for others all the time. So it's a different motivation altogether. So we have this stage of adaptation number 5 correlating with the very much its work within the 2nd tier of petals, which are the love petals, where you're learning real social interaction based not just upon your own advantage, but eventually based upon love. And you are struggling here to reconcile your own desires with the desires of others which have been revealed as worthy of fulfillment. In other words, we've gone beyond manipulation here in stage of adaptation number number 5. We saw how much manipulation there was, as you desire me, in stage of adaptation number 4. And let's see. Well, no, excuse me. 4 was the attempt to cross many different stages. 3 was very manipulative, right? In other words, I will do good things for you because I know it means I will get good things. So my motive is really still selfish. And then with stage of adaptation number 2, we are basically living by our wits and stealing from others and taking from others. The social sense is very poorly emergent there. But now, stage of adaptation number 5, a real social sense is there, and it's not just a convenience. It's a question of love, growing sense of love through response to the higher of the pairs of opposites. Okay, so what do we have? We're talking about some of the petals loosely. We know there is a knowledge tier, hall of ignorance. There's a love tier, hall of learning. There's a wisdom tier, hall of wisdom, or sacrifice tier. No wisdom without sacrifice. A sacrifice tier, which is the hall of wisdom. We have 10 soul groups or human groups, and we have 8 stages of adaptation, and we're trying to see the links that are going on between them. The intelligence aspect is strongly represented in the stages of adaptation, and in the soul groups or human groups, the 10 of them, there's more of the general description of how the people are, and we're trying to correlate in such a way that we see how they all fit together. Now, I think what we're going to do, we have 3 more to discuss, and I think there's no use to begin them at this point, because we will just have to discontinue. So rather, let us just say that we have reached the, this is the end of Egoic Lotus webinar commentary, program 6. And we are in the, well, I can't really tell you the pages. We're in EP 1, somewhere between 322 and what? Do we have any pages here? Yeah, we're on page 324. Okay, page 324, and we will, and this is about 2-hour program, and we'll beginning of Egoic Lotus webinar commentary program 7 and EP 1, page 324. That's what we will do. And I don't know yet how long it's going to be, but maybe it'll be a shorter one because I just have to finish up 6, 7, and 8. So just allow the sense of evolving man to enter your consciousness, see how complex it all is, how many variables there are, but how you can kind of stand back and more or less identify stages of a human unfoldment, and along with this goes the unfoldment of that form upon the higher mental plane, which we call the Egoic Lotus. Each circle of which, tier of which, has a certain purpose and boundaries, and each petal of which has certain purposes and boundaries. And we're going to go into detail about how all the different colors and the astrological connections with these petals describe the purposes and boundaries of each petal, and how those purposes and boundaries fit in very well with the 10 human groups or soul groups. They are souls who are human beings, and the 8 stages of adaptation. Well, I guess that's it. So we will just close with a final Om, aligning with the soul which has the vision of all of this historical progress of man and the historical progress of ourselves as a soul-infused personality. We want to clearly get the picture of where we've been, what we're passing through, and where we have to go. That's what we definitely want. So, and all of this is so that we can see clearly enough what the human being is, so that we can help more human beings achieve their goal, so that they become fully expressed souls and eventually fully expressed monads. That is our goal. Okay. We'll go on to program number 7.